Welcome to Undercurrents, our daily news show from Unheard's Washington Bureau. Today's guest is Madeline Fry Schultz. Subscribe here, wherever you get your podcasts, and at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show. Today, we are going to talk about a story that is already massive, but I expect will get bigger and bigger. People will likely be talking about it for years, and I have to say very clearly up front, if you're watching or listening to this with children, you might want to stop right here. Lily Phillips is a 23-year-old OnlyFans creator. When she announced in October plans to sleep with 100 men in one day, people were skeptical about whether she would actually do it. But Phillips did it, according to a just-released documentary on YouTuber Josh Peters' channel. Peters spent time with Phillips in the days before she went through with the challenge, and the day she did go through with the challenge, apparently having sex with 101 men in one day in a London Airbnb. Now, I'm going to play this super viral clip first of Phillips after she'd completed the day, just because it's everywhere right now.
It's not for the weak, girls, if I'm honest. It was hard. I don't know if I'd recommend it.
Why not?
I think if you're a different type of girl, it's very like... It's kind of like being a prostitute in a sense of like, it's just a different feeling. I don't know how to explain it, like...
It's not like just having sex with someone.
Yeah. Just one in, one out, like it feels intense.
Like more intense than you thought it might.
Definitely.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's okay. Just take
Yeah, 1 minute.
This is the part of the documentary most people have been focused on, and it's absolutely easy to understand why, but a couple of other moments stood out to me. So let's start with how Lily and her team handled the logistics of actually having sex with so many men in one space in one day.
Just putting a baby monitor in here so I can keep an eye on
smart.
you.
Yeah. Have you had like an energy drink?
Yeah, I had a squash pastry in the car.
Okay. And
We fueled up.
lunch or anything? What do you think?
I think I'm gonna have a break. I think it gets to about 12 and have a little...
Okay.
Breeze.
Yeah, that's good. Are the guys gonna shower? Or
No.
that just comes straight in? And the condoms?
Yeah, they're in my bag. I bought like 200 of them.
Yeah, that's good. Just in case, because of my break.
Exactly.
Yeah. And like, do we think we're gonna get to 100 today?
Yeah, I'm not leaving without it.
Now, here's how one of the men reacted. If you're watching this, you can see he's shaking violently on the screen as Peters talks to him.
We were able to speak to another man as he left the Airbnb, although he seemed shaken by the experience.
How are you feeling?
It's not something I'd normally do, but I saw it and I thought, might as well.
Yeah.
I think I saw it and I just thought, fuck it, might as well just do it.
And like, how long did you get with her?
Well, she said 5 minutes, and then halfway through, she said she hadn't started the timer, so she said like 5 minutes from now. Which was all right.
So you got some extra?
Yeah, just an extra time.
Do you know how many guys have gone before you?
No idea. No idea.
Yeah, like, is that one?
Well, look, yeah, but I don't really know. You know, I just thought,
Are you happy you did it?
a little bit, I'm just a bit nervous, you know, if anyone find out. My dad would kick me out straight away.
And here's part of the aftermath that I actually haven't seen clipped in many places, but was maybe the most interesting part of the entire documentary to me.
I think sometimes like feeling so like robotic, like by the 30th, you know, like when we're getting on a bit, I've got like a routine of like how we're gonna do this, and like it just sometimes you'd like disassociate and be like, you know, like it's not like normal sex at all. In my head right now, I can think of like 5, 6 guys, 10 guys that I remember, and that's it. But it's just, I don't know, it's just weird, isn't it? Like, if I didn't have the videos, I wouldn't have known I've done 100, you know? But yeah. I think that was kind of the hard part, is like conversing with them, and like when they'd kind of be like, oh, like we've only had 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and you said 5 on the message.
Did someone say that to you?
Yeah. And obviously it just makes me feel so bad.
Do you think you should feel bad about that?
I guess when you've promised something to people who support you, it's kind of hard to let them down.
So what's upsetting Phillips in that clip, she says, is the idea that she did not live up to her end of the transaction. Like, she owed these men more. And if you make a slightly inadequate batch of cookies for customers, let's say, you might get upset with yourself, but you probably wouldn't cry like this. Phillips explained her puffy red eyes at the end of the day, not as the result of crying, but of bodily fluids. So to be clear, this is an exceptional case. Most women will not do this. What can this actually tell us about our culture then? Well, first, if sex needn't come with emotional baggage and can morally function as a transaction, we should ask ourselves why Lily had this experience, even after taking it to the extreme. Running a marathon can be very emotional and taxing, but it's not like this. To me, what's sad is how many men participated, along with Phillip's team, who can be seen throughout the documentary, treating the experience pretty coldly, like bringing in Febreze and electrolytes, putting a baby monitor in the room to keep track of any possible safety problems. A lot of people suffered moral injuries that day in London. Here at Unheard, we talk a lot with brilliant women like Mary Harrington and Louise Perry. There's been a brewing and powerful backlash to the fourth wave feminist insistence on sex positivity. Obviously, a lot of this conflates pornography and prostitution and hookup culture, but the concept of, quote, sex positivity is what brings all of this together, that it's empowering and natural to pursue these behaviors and that they should be normalized, as should then profiting off of them. So in response to Phillip's stunt, an NYU professor posted on X, unpopular opinion in Puritan America, the reason Lily Phillips didn't seem very happy after 100 Men Train is not that it couldn't have been fun and enjoyable, it's that she didn't do it for the right reasons, i.e. her own fun and pleasure. Now, Phillips is actually upping the ante. This week in Unheard, Poppy Sowerby referred to the engagement, quote, arms race on OnlyFans, writing, haven't you heard? Prostitution is empowering. Liberated super vixen and self-described feminist Lily Phillips, 23, has declared she is to embark on the sticky Sisyphean task of bedding 1,000 men in one day. Tristan Tate weighed in on Phillips' next frontier by suggesting people disrupt the process and go undercover to offer prayers and well wishes, making it impossible for Phillips to produce a video. I don't know if anyone's actually going to go through with that, but I think a lot. Back to an old BuzzFeed article that was headlined, quote, these Gen Z women think sex positivity is overrated. Here's what one 23-year-old rape victim told the reporter, quote, it feels like we were tricked into exploiting ourselves and tricked into thinking it was our idea. I would say I gathered this mostly from media, Sex and the City, Girls, HBO somehow did a number on me, books, social media. You read a lot about sex positivity on Tumblr, you read a lot about it on Twitter when you were in high school, and it gets really ingrained in your brain that you need to be comfortable having sex with someone you're not committed to. I think in my feeble 18-year-old mind, it was probably not what I needed to hear. The woman added, really think it's overlord men somehow. There's always a Don Draper behind it. In the case of OnlyFans, owner Leonid Radvinsky has made $1 billion in dividends over the last 3 years. Now, women have agency. I think that's important. In fact, Lily Phillips said this was her fantasy. And the women, by the way, who tell other women that this is all empowering have agency too. And I think men are getting hurt by these new sexual norms. But women will lose more. And that's becoming clear. Madeline Fry Schultz is an editor at the Washington Examiner who has covered this issue extensively in recent years, and she joins us now. Maddie, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I should say we are recording this. It's almost reality television because I literally just finished watching this actual documentary. And it's so heavy. My first question, Maddie, is what about the men? Lily Phillips right now is, I think understandably, getting a lot of attention. And people are saying this is awful what you did to yourself. This is so sad. I feel so badly for her. I think there's probably a good point to be made here that 100 men treated a woman this way as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think that's something that people don't bring up enough when it comes to these kinds of issues. So Lily Phillips is really big on OnlyFans. This is how she started out. When she was in college, she would sell videos of herself on this platform. OnlyFans is basically like personalized pornography. You make videos of yourself doing things. Sometimes people will, teach a skill like cooking, but they'll be in a bikini. And it's very hard to break into because it is so popular. There are millions of content creators, even more, hundreds of millions of users. So if you are someone who wants to make money on OnlyFans, you have to do something really unique, like what she did with this stunt. But it's so interesting to think about all of where is this coming from and why is she even making money in the first place? It's because of the men, and because there were hundreds of men who were willing to come and do this stunt. Well, come and do this stunt with her. These are people who also probably had wives and girlfriends. There was something that she had previously done. She did a stunt where she had some sort of contest where the winner could come and sleep with her. And the guy showed up with his girlfriend and she waited outside while they did the deed. And so I think it's very easy to criticize this woman because obviously this was a bad idea. This is not something that we as a society want to support.
And she deserves criticism, of course.
Yes, obviously. But you can see in her eyes if you watch, and I haven't seen the whole documentary, but I've seen clips. She is clearly devastated, and she doesn't have the words to explain how uncomfortable she feels with the experience that she's just had. But all these men have enabled it, and the people in her family, the people on her team, apparently no one in her life told her not to go do this. But ultimately, it was enabled by the 100 guys who showed up and said, I'm going to help make this happen. And now she's saying she wants to do it again in one day with 1,000.
You said something really interesting just there when you made the point that OnlyFans, because this gets to the broader industry. Lily Phillips is one person, and most women are never, ever going to, God willing, undertake a challenge like this one. It's just not something that most women are going to do. Even at the end of the documentary, she says, I wouldn't recommend it, but maybe just for a certain type of girl, something like that. Most women are not going to do this, bottom line. But OnlyFans is huge. And your point about the way people are able now to profit on OnlyFans, it seems that it's possible we're getting to a point, 5 years into the existence of OnlyFans or the popularity of OnlyFans, where things could really escalate in order for people to keep making the same amount of money.
Right. Yeah. You could have, so we already have this woman, Lily, who is having, sleeping with 100 men in a day, now saying that she wants to do 1,000. You're probably going to see even more sort of disturbing fetishes, things going on this site just to keep people's attention because we're in the attention economy. People are trying to make money. And the sad thing, too, is that I think a lot of women think that this is an option in their back pocket if they find themselves unable to pay back their student debt, if they need to make a little bit of extra money. They'll just do OnlyFans and they can do it a little bit and they can make some cash. But what happens is that there is a vast majority of the content creators are not making a lot of money. It is a very small group who are making almost all of the money that comes from OnlyFans. And so you're going to see a lot of women thinking, maybe this isn't such a bad option. I'll just do it a little bit, make a little bit of money. And they're going to find that they're not making money. And they're also, those videos are out there. OnlyFans may try to put in, safeguards against people taking screenshots or downloading videos, but it's the internet and it's going to be there forever.
I don't know if it's fair to consider OnlyFans the gig economy because this type of work is always sort of different. It's hard to kind of classify. These companies are new and people got used to this sort of sugar high, cash rush. And it's possible that's just not sustainable. And what we see in the downturn or in that gradual process of decline is something really awful.
Right. And whatever ends up happening with OnlyFans, if this is a, permanent fixture in our society, and I think that, it would be great if we could talk about banning OnlyFans in the US, in the UK, where this woman is from. Whether or not this continues and it continues to be popular, the damage that it has done is going to have long-term effects. And you're going to see men who treat women as objects and vice versa. You have a lot of people now who are famous and people will slide into their DMs and say, where's your OnlyFans? Can you send me pictures? And I think people now have this idea that if you know somebody or know of somebody, then you have a right to seeing them in a vulnerable situation, their personal information. I think that people have kind of got these weird parasocial relationships with people on OnlyFans, and now it extends to anybody who's on the internet. They expect that maybe this is a possibility that they could also have an OnlyFans and that they could have access to this person as well.
Is there something we can take away from the hustle and bustle around Lily Phillips in this documentary as it's happening? There's literally a team going out to get her electrolytes, getting her a sandwich. They are managing the flow. There were STD tests. They had to sort of provide screenshots, and we can get to that in a moment because there's another can of worms. But just this business of exploitation of one woman. Granted, this was, in her case, it's a single person. But there's also a documentary that's made around her. There surely will be people defending her. In fact, I can read you a post from a professor at NYU, who says, unpopular opinion in Puritan America, the reason Lily Phillips doesn't seem very happy after 100 men train is not that it couldn't have been fun and enjoyable, it's that she didn't do it for the right reasons, like her own fun and pleasure.
I don't think there are right reasons. And I also think that she kind of did do it for her own fun. I mean, I guess she was trying to make money and become famous, but
she said it was her fantasy. She said it was her fantasy, and that's why she was doing it.
People are bending over backwards trying to make this an empowering situation. And I think it's also interesting if you try to think about who's the culprit here and where is this all coming from. The Times ran a piece about Lily Phillips, and there was a line in there that said that Phillip shows how market forces distort sex. And sure, you can make this a story about capitalism and the market gone wrong. But I think the deeper underlying issue is, why are people interested in doing this in the first place? And I think for Lily, she has sort of imbibed a lot of false lessons from modern feminism. She calls herself a feminist, and in a way, I mean, she's making money for herself. She pays her own rent. She earns good money, and so I think she thinks anything that I can do to be self-sufficient is fine. But she's not realizing the toll this is taking on her body, on her psychology, and nobody's going to tell her, because that's kind of pushes against the feminist narrative that women can do whatever they want, that sex is, it's okay for it to be transactional, that it has no emotional value. She has this cognitive dissonance, and the moments after she's just slept with 100 men, she doesn't know how to articulate it, and she can't say that it was bad or that it was a bad experience. She says stuff like, I don't know if I would recommend it, or, if you were a different type of girl, and then she says, it's kind of like being a prostitute. I don't know how to explain it. She clearly did not enjoy her experience, but then later on, after she was able to process it more, and was feeling less immediately traumatized, she was able to sanitize it, and then is now saying that she wants to do it again. But she's there's no cultural script anymore, I think, for women to have excuses to say, no, this is bad, and this is not something that we should be encouraging.
For me, I'm horrified seeing her eyes so red after all of this. And she says it's not because she's been crying. And then she does actually start crying, but she says it's because of the fluids that were assaulting her eyes all day. And you look at that, and someone in Lily Phillips' position, or this NYU professor's position, might say it's like running a marathon, right? Like this could have been for her like running a marathon if we didn't come with all of the socially constructed baggage, right? Like the only reason that for Lily Phillips that was not fun and enjoyable because she exists in a socially constructed climate that makes it hard for her to enjoy it, like a physically challenging act, as opposed to a physically and mentally challenging act, as opposed to a morally challenging one. That people are still saying that seems so sad to me. An NYU professor, I'm glad she said it, because it's a very honest version of the argument. I talked to somebody who was on Seeking Arrangements last week for a story, and this person was so traumatized by it and kind of blames the culture. Not that this person doesn't take responsibility and credit and agency into their own hands, but they felt like they were lied to about being able to just sort of have sex without any emotional consequences.
Absolutely. And this has been the big takeaway that women are seeing more and more from the sexual revolution, and how it really benefited a lot of men and not so much women, who are finding surveys say that it is not as enjoyable for them when they are sleeping with a lot of people. And this isn't even, 100 people in a day. But again, going back to the cultural narrative, like you were saying, not to absolve men and women from any blame, but it's hard for women to say, no, I don't want to sleep around. No, this is bad. Our moral scripts haven't made it so that you can reason your way to, I don't want to just sleep with a bunch of random men. And you see women sort of backing into this now. We have women engaging in the 4B movement after Trump's election, which is allegedly because they don't want to sleep with Trump supporters. This movement started in South Korea maybe a decade or so ago. The 4Bs are marriage, dating, childbirth, and sex, I think. And so now this movement is gaining some traction in the US. I've seen a lot online. I don't know how much it's actually happening. But the fact that women are interested in it, I think actually is not bad. And I think more so than a way for women to, prove their progressive bona fides, it's kind of an excuse to say, I'm going to wait for the right guy. I'm not just going to sleep around. And we've also seen celibacy as a movement become more popular. There was a Business Insider piece about it this summer. Celebrities like Julia Fox, Lenny Kravitz have been talking about how they have been staying celibate and not sleeping around. And I think we're seeing a return to, and maybe it's not the strongest reason. People are still not willing to say it is objectively bad to sleep with 100 men in one day. But we are we are kind of returning to some cultural scripts, some reasons for, okay, I don't want to have sex with a lot of guys. I want to, maintain that as something that is valuable and that happens only with one person, and that I don't just give out indiscriminately.
I'm thinking back in the documentary when she's crying. It's hard to even talk about. She's saying she feels guilty that she couldn't give every man what she felt she owed them because they had traveled and paid for that and all of the various steps they took to get there. And she felt badly that she sort of had to rush them along. That's part of the reason she was crying. That was incredibly striking to me. Like, maybe that was the expression. That's how it came out for her in the moment. This like sense of, I don't know, sadness or guilt. Maybe that was how it manifested, but that she actually felt guilty as a woman for not being able to give the man like what he paid for, what he traveled for, what he was owed. That was hard to watch.
Yeah. And I think that the perspective of someone like the NYU professor is going to be, oh, it's just a woman trying to be a people pleaser and trying to make men happy. And there's some internalized misogyny or something there. But I think that is probably like a way that she felt comfortable saying, I do feel guilty about these experiences, these men. I knew that they were shallow because she did feel like there was something missing there, obviously. And she can't, again, fully articulate it, but she is having these experiences feeling like I had this unfulfilling interaction with so many men. And she also talks about she probably remembers about 10, up to 10. She said 5, 6, 10 of the men that she interacted with that day. It was all just such a blur. And she can't even remember. She said, if it weren't for the video, I wouldn't know that I had done that at all.
Maddie, I just want to kind of play devil's advocate for a moment, because on the one hand, it seems clear to me that in a sense, the patriarchy is alive and well. If someone is having 100 men come and sleep with her, and that's like empowerment, it seems like it's a great deal for the guys and not such a great deal for the woman. But if we take the devil's advocate position here and we say, this is truly something that in another context, another cultural context, if women were fully empowered, would be maybe equivalent to running a marathon. It would be an exercise in self-fulfillment. She said that this was her fantasy, so why shouldn't she be able to fulfill her fantasy in a free society? I mean, you mentioned banning OnlyFans earlier. I don't think anyone's ever going to make a law against having sex with 100 men, like put a quota on women, and I don't think any of us would argue for that. So why shouldn't she be able to do this? And is there still a culture that made it too difficult?
Yeah, so on the one hand, it's kind of easy to criticize the progressive argument that she would have enjoyed it more if it had been more socially acceptable. It's true. It's still not fully socially acceptable to do what she did. She got broad condemnation for this publicity stunt.
Yes.
But on the other hand, you can see in the video where she's crying, she's not even able to fully process it logically, but she feels it in her body, the experience that she has just had. And I think another part of feminism that has really harmed women is that we are not allowed to listen to our own bodies and what our bodies are telling us. And so we're so connected to this ideology of we want to be just like men. Obviously, men shouldn't pull this stunt either, but I think that it is even more harmful for women. I think maybe Mary Harrington, other people have made this point, but feminism treats women like defective men. And so we think we need to be more like a man. We just need to toughen up, then things will be better and we'll be able to do all the things that men have historically done. And some of the things men have historically done, we do not want to do. There obviously is an element of, there is still a little bit of stigma to this, but the stigma is there for a reason. And she talks about she wants to get married someday and she wants to have kids. And she knows that it's going to be hard to find a husband considering her past. And then you have to think about, what are you going to tell your kids about this someday? How are you going to defend it? Are you going to say, this was truly an empowering experience for me, I don't regret it? Or are you going to look back on this someday and think, what was I doing?
Maddie, I'm curious how you think this kind of is going to land with the average woman, because when OnlyFans came out, there's like a splashy ABC documentary about it that really only showed the harms briefly and said that they were potential abuse, like violence against women, which, yes, obviously, or, women not making enough money, stuff to that effect. But it wasn't the moral harm. There was so little on that. It kind of had assumed that point, that we were all on the same page, that women should be able to do this, and most of them are not having sex with 100 men in a single day. But some of them are having sex with hundreds of men and getting paid for it. So how do you think this is going to land with women around, America and the UK in this kind of climate?
I don't think it's going to land well, and I think it's going to land worse than it did maybe even 10 years ago, because we've had over the past few decades this push to normalize prostitution. We call it sex work now, and pornography. There was a documentary, there have been documentaries on Pornhub and some of these big websites. And the thing is that when they focus on the problems with these sites or these industries, they always focus on when women are explicitly being exploited because of a lack of consent. And so the most that a lot of people will acknowledge when it comes to morality or boundaries when it comes to sex will be consent culture. So did the woman say yes? Did the man say yes? But then we're kind of ignoring the fact that a lot of people are coerced. Maybe you technically say yes, but you are not comfortable in the situation. You didn't want to be here.
Or you're really intoxicated. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You could be drunk. Modern feminism would look at Les Mis and say that Fantine was only in a bad situation because she didn't agree to it. It was fine that she was a prostitute otherwise. We don't actually want to normalize these things. And I think a lot of people are realizing the issues with consent culture. And we've seen articles about this in the past few years. Is there are a lot of young women who say that they have participated in hookup culture, slept with a lot of different guys, and they have consented. They're not saying that they have been raped or sexually assaulted, but they are not happy with their experiences, and they're saying this hasn't been good. And so I think the important thing right now is that we are seeing a shift away from consent culture as just the baseline for a good experience and what people should expect. And we're seeing people push more for we need to find someone who respects us, just like very, very base level, very foundational things. And maybe we can kind of move up from there away from sleeping with 100 people in a day is fine as long as everybody agreed to it.
If you are younger right now, if you're a member of Gen Z, you grew up in a porn-haunted culture. You were exposed to it on average in your early 10s, like 10, 11, 12. For many of the people who are exposed to it at that age, it's actually they're immediately exposed to hardcore pornography. It's in regular use. That means someone is buying and someone is selling. So that's a transaction that has moral implications for both parties. The more that we're seeing in this high-tech world, I guess the excesses of the empowerment argument, I wonder if you think it's actually going to backfire soon, that we will actually start seeing mainstream feminists like go back to Andrea Dworkin instead of, going the route that many went on in the 90s when this was a hot debate for, I think, technological reasons, because it was becoming saturated in different ways at that time. Is this actually imminent? Is the backfiring actually imminent now?
I think it's going to be a slow process. I don't know that it is imminent, but I do think it is going to be led by Gen Z who, as we talked about, have been having less sex. And maybe that is because they are engaging with people less in real life, or maybe it's because they're being pickier and they are not buying into the ideas of Sex in the City that you just go sleep around with a ton of people. And I do think pornography has really affected them. Again, as you said, a lot of people are exposed to it at a very young age, and especially with how prevalent violence has become, violent pornography, people are really terrified. And I think also some kids are getting their views on sex from pornography, and others are afraid that if that's what sex is like, that's not what I want. And I think you're going to see a lot more parents realizing how pornography is shaping the perceptions of their children and how disturbing that is. And so I think you're going to see the parents and the kids as they're growing up, as they're going through puberty coming out of their teenage years, are going to have a lot more of a serious perspective on this than the people who the internet happened and developed when they were older and they were adults and they were able to kind of pick and choose what they saw and have a little bit more, a little bit more influence over what they were exposed to. A lot of kids are really struggling, and I think that you are going to see those children, their parents, really engaging with this issue with a lot more intention.
Maddie Fry Schultz, Maddie Fry Schultz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, like I said at the beginning of this video, I actually really think what we're seeing from Lily Phillips, it feels kind of like a landmark. It's super viral right now. You can expect that to be even more viral if she goes through with the 1,000 men stunt, with just even from a physical health perspective. Just if you didn't watch the full documentary, God bless you, but it involves her talking about how she's actually not sore. It's really, really grim, hard to get through because she seems so upset. She can't quite say why she's so upset because Peter's actually asked her, have you totally processed this yet? She doesn't think it doesn't seem like she's totally processed it yet, which is just, it's hard to watch somebody go through a incredible emotional experience, even at the same time as you recognize that they have agency and they made this choice. And, she doesn't seem upset with herself for making the choice. She seems to have been happy that she went through with it. And that's evidenced by the fact that she's now going to the 1,000 number. Impossible almost to conceive of how a person goes through with that without having significant health challenges, even just from the statistical perspective of STDs. You do a lot of screening, but as she says in this Peters documentary, even that only goes so far. So, I mean, it's going to continue getting viral. That's if this 100 is viral and she documents 1,000, I mean, that goes into the stratosphere. And that's why we wanted to talk about it here on Undercurrents. I mean, this is one of the most significant undercurrents in all of culture and politics right now, is how men and women are adjusting to rapidly changing sexual norms. It's sort of amusing, the NYU professor whose tweet I posted earlier in this episode saying, we're in, quote, Puritan America. I mean, by historical standards, this is not a very Puritan version of America or a very Puritan version of a society really in modern history. So I don't know if that's a great argument, to be honest, but it could be the left that sends us going all the way back to Puritanism by pushing these boundaries so far that you get the Tristan Tates of the world, who we mentioned earlier, then, recommending actually regressive and, reactionary in a bad way crackdowns. So it's a sad story, but it is one of the most important things that I think runs throughout our culture. Men out of work, marriage rates affecting home buying rates, affecting the levels that women say they're having children. Women say in America that they're having fewer children than they ultimately want to. It's one of the things we see Phillips grappling with in the documentary. She says, sometimes I think because of the way society stigmatizes what I do, I'll never be able to have a normal life. I'm paraphrasing her, but like a husband and children. She seems really sad about that. But in general, this stuff all does delay marriage, which delays home buying, which delays how many children you're able to have just based on age. And then we seek more sort of technological solutions to all of this, which we're told will solve the problem, but then end up creating some unintentional problems. And so things are pretty jumbled. And I think this story speaks to that. And I think it's a glimpse into a future where we're going to see a lot more stuff sort of similar. And then we're going to see reactions to it that might be dangerous as well. So thank you for tuning into today's edition of Undercurrents. We will be back here with more soon. Make sure to subscribe on the channel at Undercurrents. Subscribe wherever you download your podcasts, and of course over at undercurrents.tv for the full premium experience of the show. Thanks for watching.